Out on a dusty Texas ranch, an old rancher was going about his usual chores, mending fences, checking cattle, and enjoying the quiet, when a shiny black SUV pulled up, kicking up a cloud of dirt. An FBI agent, dressed in a crisp suit and aviator sunglasses, stepped out, flashing his badge. "Sir, we got a tip that you might be growing illegal substances on this land. I'm going to need to take a look around." The rancher, calm as ever, wiped the sweat from his brow and replied, "Well, you're welcome to look, son, but I wouldn't go into that field over there," he said, pointing to a pasture behind the barn. The agent's face twisted with authority. "Listen here, old man. I'm a federal agent. See this badge?" He held it inches from the rancher's face. "This badge says I can go wherever I want. No questions asked. Got it?" The rancher shrugged. "Suit yourself," and went back to his chores. About 15 minutes later, a blood-curdling scream echoed across the ranch. The old man turned to see the FBI agent sprinting out of the field, arms flailing wildly, with the ranch's biggest, angriest bull charging right behind him, steam practically shooting from its nostrils. The rancher dropped his tools, rushed to the fence, and cupped his hands around his mouth, yelling, "Your badge! Show him your badge!" A pirate strolls into a bar with a peg leg, an eye patch, and a hook for a hand. The bartender eyes him up and down and asks, "How'd you lose the leg?" The pirate takes a swig of rum and replies, "That be from a mighty battle at sea. A cannonball took it clean off." The bartender winces. "Brutal. What about the hand?" The pirate grins. "Lost it in a sword fight. The scallywag was quick, but I was quicker, just not quick enough to save me hand." "And the eye?" the bartender asks, gesturing to the patch. The pirate sighs. "That one's embarrassing. I were looking up at the sky when a seagull flew overhead and pooped right in me eye." The bartender bursts out laughing. "Wait, you lost your eye from bird poop?" The pirate leans in and whispers, "Nay, it were me first day with a hook." A huge group of blondes gathers in Times Square, determined to prove they're just as smart as anyone else. They put up a sign, "Ask us anything." A man steps forward, curious, and picks a blonde at random. "All right," he says. "What's the first letter of the alphabet?" The blonde proudly shouts, "V." The man shakes his head. "That's not right." The crowd of blondes starts chanting, "One more chance! One more chance!" The man chuckles, "Okay, fine. What's the capital of New York?" The blonde thinks hard and yells, "Toronto!" The man facepalms, but the crowd erupts again. "One more chance! One more chance!" Trying to keep it simple, he asks, "All right, what's 2 plus 2? The blonde beams and answers, 4! The crowd goes wild, cheering and chanting, "Give her another chance! Give her another chance!" The new CEO walks into the office, determined to make changes and prove he's in charge. He spots a guy leaning against the wall, doing nothing. Furious, he storms over. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" The guy shrugs. "Just waiting to get paid." The CEO glares at him. "How much do you make a week?" The guy says, "About $200. The CEO whips out his wallet, pulls out $400, and slaps it into the guy's hand. "Here's 2 weeks' pay, now get out." The guy leaves without a word. Feeling proud, the CEO turns to his staff and asks, "Anyone want to tell me what that guy did here?" One employee clears his throat and says, "That was the pizza delivery guy." One chilly evening, Johnny and his girlfriend were sitting together when he shivered and said, "Babe, I'm feeling so cold." His girlfriend smiled and said, "Here, hold both my batteries." Johnny held her hands but still felt cold and said, "I'm still freezing." She leaned in closer and whispered, "Honey, put the plug in from below." A blonde walks into a New York bank and asks for a $1,000 loan for a month-long trip to Asia. The loan officer says, "We'll need some collateral." She replies, "No problem. I'll leave my Rolls-Royce. It's worth $200,000. The bank gladly accepts, and after she leaves, the staff laugh at the idea of someone using a $200,000 car for a $1,000 loan. A month later, the blonde returns, repays the $1,000 plus $20 in interest, and collects her keys. The manager, still amused, asks, "We did some digging. You're a millionaire. Why on earth would you take out such a small loan and leave a Rolls-Royce as collateral?" She smiles and says, "Where else in New York can I park my car safely for a month for just $20? Tom and Joe had been inseparable since childhood, bound together by one shared passion, baseball. Whether it was playing catch in the park, debating stats over beers, or catching every game they could, baseball was the thread that wove their friendship together. One lazy afternoon, as they sat in the bleachers watching a local game, Tom leaned over and said, "Hey, Joe, have you ever wondered, do you think there's baseball in heaven?" Joe chuckled. "Man, I hope so. Can you imagine? Eternal games, perfect weather, and maybe Babe Ruth coaching?" Tom grew serious. "Promise me something. If one of us goes first, we find a way to come back and let the other know. Deal?" Joe hesitated but smiled. "Deal, but you better not prank me from beyond the grave." They shook on it. A week later, tragedy struck. Tom passed away unexpectedly. Joe was devastated, but he clung to their promise, half hoping, half dreading that Tom might actually find a way to reach out. One night, as Joe drifted off to sleep, he was jolted awake by a soft whisper. "Joe! Joe!" Heart pounding, Joe sat up. "Who's there?" he called into the dark. "It's me, Tom," the voice replied, calm and familiar. Joe's eyes widened. Tom, is that really you? It is, Tom said gently. I've got some news, good and bad. Joe leaned forward. Okay, hit me with the good news first. Tom's voice warmed. There is baseball in heaven. Beautiful fields, endless games, legends everywhere. It's everything we ever dreamed of. Joe grinned, tears welling in his eyes. That's incredible. So, what's the bad news? Tom hesitated. You're scheduled to pitch tomorrow. John had always been a man of simple pleasures, family barbecues, weekend fishing trips, and quiet evenings with his wife, Sarah. But life, as it often does, threw him a curveball. One rainy evening, John was in a terrible car accident. Though he survived, his face was badly burned, leaving him nearly unrecognizable. The doctors did everything they could, but when it came time for reconstructive surgery, they hit a snag. I'm afraid we can't use your own skin, John, the surgeon explained. You're too lean for the amount we need. John was devastated, but before he could even speak, Sarah stepped forward. Use mine, she said softly. The doctor hesitated. It's a significant donation. Are you sure? She smiled, though her eyes glistened. Absolutely. After careful consideration, the surgeon decided that the best skin to use would be from an area that wouldn't leave Sarah with visible scars, her buttocks. She agreed without hesitation. The surgery was a success. In fact, John looked even better than before. His new face was smooth, vibrant, and free of scars. Family and friends were amazed, praising the doctors and marveling at how well he had recovered. But no one ever learned the source of the skin. They simply assumed it was a miracle of modern medicine. As the days passed, John couldn't shake the feeling of overwhelming gratitude. One quiet evening, while Sarah sat reading on the couch, he walked over and knelt beside her. Sarah, he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. I can't thank you enough. Every time I look in the mirror, I see your gift. I'm so grateful for your sacrifice. She put down her book and smiled warmly, brushing his cheek with her hand. Oh, honey, you don't need to thank me. But then, with a mischievous glint in her eyes, she added, Besides, I get all the thanks I need every time your mother kisses you on the cheek. The sun hung low over the Jamaican shoreline, casting a golden glow on the gentle waves. 3 men lounged under a thatched umbrella, cold drinks in hand, watching the tide roll in. Eventually, conversation turned to how they had all ended up in paradise. The first man, a tanned, relaxed fellow, leaned back and sighed. I used to own a big superstore in California, he said. Business was great for a while, but then sales tanked. One day, a terrible fire broke out. Total loss. Insurance payout came through and, well, he gestured at the beach. Here I am. The second man, wearing a flashy gold watch, nodded. Same kind of story for me. I ran a jewelry store in the Midwest. Economy took a dive, then we got robbed, cleaned out. Insurance covered everything. I figured, why rebuild? So I took the money and moved out here. They both turned to the third man, a quiet, bearded fellow who had been staring at the waves. He took a slow sip of his drink before speaking. I had a little fishery on the East Coast, he said. One day, a hurricane hit. Everything was destroyed. Nothing left but the insurance money. So I came here. The other 2 furrowed their brows, exchanging puzzled looks. After a long pause, one of them asked, Wait a minute. How in the world did you start a hurricane? A sleek black limousine cruised down a quiet country road, its polished surface gleaming under the afternoon sun. Inside, a wealthy lawyer sat comfortably, sipping a glass of sparkling water and reviewing case notes when something unusual caught his eye. On the side of the road, 2 scruffy men were crouched low, tearing at patches of grass and eating it hungrily. The lawyer, curious and somewhat disturbed, instructed his driver to pull over. Rolling down the tinted window, he called out, Excuse me! Why on earth are you eating grass? One of the men, his face weathered and thin, stood up and wiped his mouth. We've fallen on hard times, sir, he replied. We're out of work, broke. This grass is all we have to survive. The lawyer frowned, seemingly moved. That's awful, he said, adjusting his expensive cufflinks. Tell you what, why don't you and your friend come home with me? I'll make sure you get a proper meal. The man's eyes widened in disbelief. Oh, sir. That's too kind, but we both have families. The lawyer smiled warmly. Well then, bring them too. There's plenty of room in the limo. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the 2 men called out, and moments later their wives and children emerged from the bushes. Dirty, thin, but hopeful. They all piled into the spacious limousine, whispering thanks and exchanging looks of amazement. As they drove off, one of the wives, clutching her child close, leaned toward the lawyer. Sir, I can't thank you enough. We didn't know how we were going to survive another day. The lawyer gave her a reassuring smile. Oh, don't mention it. The grass at my estate is almost a foot tall. You're going to love it.